To the podcast, hablemos de lo nuevo. For the G's, by the G's, que pasa en el terreno. Vienen jugadores y se van, traiga lo nuevo. A huevo. Doesn't matter where you from. Salvador, Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua. Todo mi latino, come and listen for an hour. TikTok, que traemos lo que quiere. Todo lo que pasa dentro y fuera de las redes. Really? You don't know what it is. Reportamos con la lupa what we see at the digs. En las buenas y en las malas yo diré la verdad. Si cometen un error o tienen habilidad, la calidad del rival cuando viene a jugar. Facts. Yo no me muerdo la lengua. Got love for the crest in the city I came from. Los campeones de campeones y con copas mi race. No empezamos el programa, soy la voz de LA One. Soy la voz de LA One. Love. Yeah.
Hello, hola, and buenas, and welcome to another edition of La Cuna Galaxiana, a podcast always made with love for all you LA Galaxy fans and MLS fans, wherever you may be. Thank you once again for hanging out with us and checking out the wonderful world of Galaxylandia. Today, we are doing your first road game preview of the year as the LA Galaxy will travel to Canada, Vancouver to be exact, this weekend to face off against the Whitecaps on Sunday, March 2nd. In an effort to not lose two in a row to start the year. We'll be joined by Corner of the Galaxy co-host and LA Times sports writer Kevin Baxter to get us thoughts on the Galaxy's home and season opener, what the fix might be for the loss, the Galaxy's worst-case scenario, LA player profiles, and what the Galaxy needs to do against a Whitecaps team that won their season opener pretty handedly to get a win on the road in a place that's traditionally been tough for the Galaxy to play at. Plus, is Emilio Garces the new fastest player in the world? All that and more coming up on this episode of La Cuna Galaxiana. But before we get to everything, let me introduce myself. I am one of your co-hosts, Rob Halone. You can find my written work at the Sporting Tribune and Extra Time Talk and online at El Escudero de LA. And we have my co-host, a.k.a. birthday boy, big birthday boy, Ananda Kirana, in the seat right next to me as usual. Papa, I would ask you how you're feeling, but I mean, you told me how you're feeling. You're a little under the weather, so it's wonderful that you're here with us and with chat to go through it all, even though, you know, you're feeling a little down.
Yeah, man. Well, like I said, LA Galaxy soccer. Well, last year it was a point of happiness. This year it's just like Raul G says in the chat, it's sad for hours to begin with. But no, man, always in good spirits. I am yellow flagged today. I don't know if I can play the full match, but you know, I will give it my all in the 60 to 70 minute cameo that I'm going to be on here as much as possible. And you know what we got some subs today, right? We got some subs to come in today. Mr. K-Bax himself, super stoked, man, to have the Panda on. You know, we met him, we talked with him in the Coachella, and yeah, it just happened. So good stuff for sure. And thank you, Rocio. Muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias. I turned 18 today, guys. Just letting you know.
Yes, a very, very young 18 years old. I tried very, very desperately to get anybody and everybody that I saw at the digs on Sunday to get this man to drink in celebration of his birthday. And then at one point I lost him, and then I don't know how it went. But yeah, guys, we are very happy to announce to you that we hit those 500 subs. Thanks to you guys. You guys are the reason we're here, and the reason we can forget about las penas, las enfermedades, and you know, really just be in sad 4 hours with you guys. Like I said, thanks for getting us 500. Keep on subbing. You know, that helps us out a lot. And now we have some super chats. And whenever you guys want to dip in and get something off your chest or ask a question, that's super chat right there. Who will be first? Who will be first to get the super chats? And more importantly, who will be sixth to go ahead and represent that 6th MLS Cup that the Galaxy have? So, yeah,
there
guys, we appreciate.
Let's try to get to 6 super chats for those 6 MLS Cups every time. I'll always have the goal up there. So you guys, again, we're just thankful and glad that you guys are here with us. But you know, if you do want to help out this little teeny tiny pod. Basically all the donations that come in, we're going to put right back in this show, right? Better equipment, better streaming services, better internet, because trust me, I had my fair share of Spectrum internet issues last year.
We've both had our issues, Papa.
Oh man. Yeah.
Those internets.
Let's not try any more streams from our Suegro's house, right? That's first order of business.
Yeah, for damn sure. It's never a good experience when you have to stream from mom and pop's house. But yeah, thank you guys for getting us there. And since again, this guy's too modest to plug this. Los Galácticos episode 5 is dropping tomorrow, and I've had a little sneak peek at just the little intro now, and it's fire. You're gonna love it. Go ahead and check it out. It drops tomorrow. That's Profe Alex and Anandita Kairana getting a deep dive into the Galaxy midfield. Who, let's face it, we'll talk about it with Kevin Baxter in a little bit, but they have their problems. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but a couple of quick news items here. Over the weekend, Emilio Garces could have become the new fastest player in the world, Ananda. He reached a top speed of 23.54 miles per hour in closing down San Diego's Thomas Angel in the 92nd minute. That was the fastest since this stat has been tracked by Sport Tech Solutions in 2023. Gabriel Peck was also amongst the fastest sprint speeds in MLS this weekend at 21.52. And Corner of the Galaxy noted that Joseph Paintsil was rated as tied for the fastest footballer in the world last year at 23.36. Of course, Garces' 23.54 beats that. So if Joseph Paintsil was at 23.36 and it was the fastest tied, like I said, does that make Emilio Garces the new fastest player, Ananda? Am I reading this right? I know I'm not good at math, but I mean, you are. Tell me, am I interpreting right?
Yeah, he was, and I don't know if you just said it, but he clocked that in the very last play of the game. Funnily enough, with a goal, right? Ended up in a goal for the opposition. But man, he was. This kid's lightning fast. I think we've talked about him multiple times on this pod. His recovery pace is unreal. Gives me sort of New Who vibes, right, from Seattle. Just what a physical specimen this kid is, man. It's unreal.
Well, like you said, unfortunately, it ended up in a goal. Not that it would have done a lot for the final result, but that effort was just wasted there. But yeah, I mean, it ended up in a goal. It ended up in a loss, and because of that, the Galaxy find themselves dropping 6 spots this week in the power rankings. They drop all the way to 8th from 2nd, and I can't say that it's. I'm usually like pretty salty about these rankings. Not that they mean anything, right? But
I think that's a bigger point.
Yeah, exactly. Not that they mean anything, but when I see him, I get pretty salty about him. But I'm kind of okay with this one. Of course, the Galaxy's opponents, the Whitecaps, they jumped 9 spots to 11th. So they're the Whitecaps are on the up. The Galaxy, hit a tough loss. But we'll talk more about that here.
San Diego jumping in that top 10 right away, huh? Man.
Yeah, look at that. And 7th, and they were 28th.
Exactly.
So jumping up 21 spots again. Ananda, is my math okay? 21 spots, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, and no, your math is perfectly fine. It's MLS's math that's not great because you jumped 21 spots in a week. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's
just saying.
Pretty hefty. That's pretty hefty there. And like our mate Tony Sanchez said in the San Diego preview, it's not so much that San Diego won, it's more that the Galaxy lost. Kind of shot themselves in the foot with not following the game plan. But again, we're gonna get there. Quick Champions Cup roundup here. Miami beat the brakes off of SKC 3-1 in Miami, punctuated by that Lionel Messi volley. Really, that first goal, kind of in the first leg, the first and only goal was a nice Messi turn and kind of just sucked the life out of SKC, and they would go on to lose the tie on aggregate 4-1. Goals also by Ande and Suarez, and former G Memo Rodriguez gets a consolation goal for SKC. LAFC is through after beating Colorado at home 1-0, 2-2 on aggregate in that tie. But LAFC gets through on away goals. Ooh, and of course
that graphic hurts.
And of course, Mark Delgado scores the goal for LAFC to put them through. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Mate's trying to, feed his family and get that paycheck. But
Good for him. Happy
but
for him.
believe me, it was jarring to see him point to the to that crest, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, you've only known her for about a month, but okay. So anyway, Cincinnati and FC Montagua, they tied at 1 in their second leg tie. Of course, Denke scored. That's becoming pretty inevitable. 3 games, 3 goals. Cincinnati wins that tie 5-2. Seattle Sounders beat Antigua Guatemala 3-1, braced by Pedro de la Vega, who has started pretty hot as well. Golazo in the last one, a brace in this one, and a goal by Paul Arriola. Aggregate score 6-2 in that one. And then Herediano and RSL, who would be the Galaxy's opponent, one of these guys. Galaxy were hoping that RSL took this one. However, they lose this one at home 2-1. Forster Ahago puts the hosts ahead before Herediano turns this one around in the 70th minute with an away goal. Just a bad clearance giveaway, just bad defensive action in the back end. And then Randy Vega kills it in injury time with a pretty cheeky Panenka, and it's game over. Now the Galaxy face Herediano, who now sees the Galaxy come to Costa Rica on Wednesday, March 5th. The return leg is 1 week after that on Wednesday, March 12th.
All right, RIP Galaxy travel schedule already early this season. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that with Kevin, man. That's probably the last opponent that we wanted, right? A trip to Salt Lake sounds much better than a trip all the way to, I don't even know how long that flight is from Vancouver, because they got to leave right after they play Vancouver, conceivably.
Yeah, well, I mean, from Los Angeles to Salt Lake, it's like 2.5 hours. And I mean, I didn't even factor in the fact that they're not even going from LA anymore. They're going from Vancouver. Ralji hits us with the first super chat.
Hey,
thanks, my dudes, and G's up. G's up indeed. Thank you, man. We rule because you guys are here and you guys are lending the good vibes, man.
Raul G, you know what? We're gonna take that and put a plaque for you, man. First ever super chat on Here. Cheers. Salud, papa. Gracias.
Yeah, salute, and salute to this next man that we're about to have on. I never even approached this guy because I was like, nah, he's too cool for me. I mean, and plus he's super busy. I mean, I see how hard this guy works, going all over the place. But yeah, he's been part of the sports scene in LA for almost 20 years as a sports writer for the LA Times, covering, I think it's 18 and a half exactly, covering everything from soccer, hockey, and baseball. He's covered 7 World Cups, 5 Olympic Games, 6 World Series, a Super Bowl, and been at big papers, winning Pulitzer Prizes at the Times and the Miami Herald. He is also the world-renowned co-host of Corner of the Galaxy, alongside the podfather Josh Guessman, whereas Score fans know him as one half of Panda and Pato. We know him on this show as K-Bax, Kevin Baxter. Please welcome to the show. Put your hands together for Kevin Baxter, y'all.
Hey there, how are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing so
Kevin,
nice.
how are you?
Thank you so much for taking the time. We know you're in Arizona right now for spring training. You're kind of living away from home, so thank you for taking the time. Like I said, are you covering our champion Dodgers out there, perchance?
Well, I will be. Today I did the Angels. Tomorrow I'm going to the Diamondbacks and Seattle Mariners, working on some stuff. Then I got a NASCAR race here coming up next week, and then we'll do the Dodgers. Doing the Dodgers right before they take off for Japan. By the way, I know how far the flight is from Vancouver to Costa Rica.
Do share.
10 hours and 4 minutes.
Ooh.
And you could fly to Paris or London in about the same amount of time. And we were talking about this earlier. I was wondering about whether the Galaxy might, they play Vancouver on a Sunday, whether they might fly back after the game to LA and then fly from LA to Costa Rica. And as I thought about it, it really seemed to be stupid, because they would leave Vancouver late Sunday night, get home early Monday morning. So Monday's a wasted day, right? Then they would have to fly to Costa Rica Tuesday. They wouldn't have a chance to adjust to the weather or the time difference. It's much, much better for them. So I asked the Galaxy, I said, this doesn't make any sense for you guys to come back. So it's much, much better to just go straight after the game, 10 hours. They'd get to Costa Rica. It'll be weird. They'll get to Costa Rica about noon on Monday, Costa Rica time. And again, Monday's a wasted day. I'm sure they'll train Tuesday, but at least they'll be in the weather. They'll be in the climate. They'll have the time change. It's it really is complicated for the Galaxy for a number of different ways. One is they have 7 games in 22 days in March, which is insane.
It's brutal.
They play in 3 different countries, 3 different states, and 1 province of Canada. It's an insane schedule. They go to Minnesota, they go to Portland. They're lucky that the Orlando City game is at home, because imagine if that was a road game too. And they're going to do it without their full team. Nascimento is not probably ready to play. We know that Royce is not going to be 90 minutes and ready to play, may not all season. They don't have Paintsel. They don't have Ricky Puig. So they're going into this really, really difficult stretch, sort of with one hand tied behind their back. And the only bright side I could think of is, thank God MLS went to charter flights. Could you imagine if they had to do this? First of all, getting out of Vancouver on a commercial flight is really tough. And airlines don't fly a lot of places from Vancouver. So there would be no direct flight, for one thing. And another thing, you'd have, Gabriel Peck's in a middle seat on Southwest trying to get down to Costa Rica. That would not be very good.
Nah, for sure. And you know what? I mean, they could at least send him United, who I heard is starting to serve Whataburger or like Five Guys, I heard now. So at least they can get those eats. But we shouldn't cheat on In-N-Out anyway. That sounds like a brutal schedule. I mean, the chat and the listeners heard like basically everywhere you're going, and everything you're covering NASCAR and everything like that. So just how hard it is to travel. I mean, of course, we're not like, none of the 3 of us are, pro athletes, but it's brutal on the body, right? So, I mean, for somebody like Maya Yoshida, right, those 10 hours, what do you do? What do you imagine he's going to do? Like, just get some treatment on the plane? Like,
well, it's tough. I mean, they do have a charter flight, which changes everything. I've flown charters and I've flown commercial, and I've flown with soccer teams on both. The commercial flight, when I flew with the Galaxy, it's just like any commercial flight you or I would take. It's a mess. You got to line up. I was standing in the security line with Zlatan once. It's just insane. I saw.
Sure, he was not happy.
Yeah, I know. I saw Landon Donovan sitting in the middle seat, and you'd go through the same, hassle at the airport. Charter flight is so much different. It's a completely different way of travel. So yeah, I do think players will probably be getting treatment on the plane. They'll certainly be sleeping, which, you can't do that on a commercial flight. First of all, the seats are too crammed, and there's a crying baby, and there's the pilot making the announcement every 11 seconds, just shut up and take us there. Don't give us all these announcements. So they don't have to deal with any of that. That is going to help a lot, and they can take off when they want, and they, pretty much land when they can. So all that, the charter flight is great, but there's other problems too. Like, are the Galaxy going to play the same team in Costa Rica that they do in Vancouver?
Ooh, yeah.
And the reason that's important is if you decide that you're going to give, a guy a blow, then did he fly back on a commercial flight, fly back to LA on his own? And then does another guy fly from LA to Costa Rica on a commercial flight? Do you know what I mean? Like, let's just say, for an example, just the name, let's just say Miguel Berry is not going to play in Vancouver, but he is going to play in Costa Rica. Does he go to Vancouver with the team so that he's on that flight? Does he not go? Because if the idea is to rest him, to make him fly that extra 6 hours up to Vancouver and back, that's not in his best interest. So how do they handle that? That's one thing. And another thing is the European players, or even the South American players, but certainly the European players. Olivier Giroud was talking about this, where he said, look, the longest flight we would have in Europe would be a Champions League flight. And it might be 2 hours, maybe 2.5. Maybe if you're going from London to, I don't know what city it might be, but I flew from London to Stuttgart, Germany once, and it was like 55 minutes. I mean, it's just, you don't really know how close those cities are until you make those flights. So he said, a 2-hour flight was just super long. And he said, in the States, you fly that all the time for a conference game. You fly 2.5 hours to Kansas City or Salt Lake, and there's time differences. There's 4 different time zones in the U.S. And so going out of Costa Rica, they're going through a couple of time zones. And you're right, it is wearing on the body. The time change is bad. The climate, wears on you. I do it as a sports writer, and just basically stay in air-conditioned press boxes. But, when you have to go out and perform and play and you're tired, and you're 37 years old like Maya Yoshida, it can be really tough.
So speaking of, what's the coolest place you think you've ever been? Like you said, you've been in a security line with Zlatan, but where's like maybe your bucket list place that you've gone, and then like the coolest place that surprised you?
You mean like a physical location?
Yeah, like on assignment.
Yeah. Well, since I came back to the Times, I started at the Times in the late 80s, if you can believe that, and then went to the Miami Herald for 7 years and came back. Since I've been back in 2007, I've been to 35 countries, I think. I think
those miles.
New Zealand for the Women's World Cup was amazing. I'd move there in a heartbeat. I do love Vancouver. Way too expensive to live there. I do love Vancouver. I've been to Uganda once for a baseball story. I would not want to move to Uganda. I would not want to move to Uganda. Russia was really weird. But yeah, I think I think what I have to say, if you told me I could move to any place that I had traveled to as a reporter, it would definitely be New Zealand. It's amazing.
Well, out of all the places that you've been, we added another occasion to that on Sunday when the Galaxy opened their season. How did that trophy presentation and the hanging of the banner, how did that rank on Galaxy events that you've covered?
Well, it felt over the top, but I've seen some of the LAFC trophy presentations and talk about really going over the top. I mean, you would think those guys had cured cancer and won World War III all in the same day with some of their trophy presentations. I thought it was pretty appropriate. I mean, they won the MLS Cup and they got to drop the banner. The one thing that was missing was the players actually got their rings. They had a team dinner on Thursday, and they got their rings at the team dinner. So everybody already had their rings. Players that are not on the team will apparently get, when possible, will get their rings when their teams play the Galaxy. So Marky Delgado will get his ring before one of the El Tráficos. I don't know if the Galaxy are going to play Nashville, so if Brugman can get his ring, obviously day on they play. Kansas City will come here, and Dan Beckerman told me the plan is to do like a little video highlight, couple of minutes of the players highlights really with the Galaxy. And then they will, Dan Beckerman or maybe Greg Vanney, someone will then go onto the field and present the player with the ring. That's the plan. I suppose if the player says, no, I really don't want to do that before the game. I don't want the Galaxy to give me a gift and then I have to go out and beat the Galaxy. So I'd prefer, you guys just come by the hotel and give it to me. But that's the plan that they want to actually honor these players with their rings. I thought the trophy presentation was nice, but, on the other hand, San Diego had to sit there and watch that thing. And I think that may have Yoshida complained to me after the game. He said they were celebrating like they just won the MLS Cup, and I wonder if part of that was like, hey, remember what you guys did before the game? Okay, watch us now. We're going to celebrate.
Yeah, right.
You talked about Garces and how fast he ran. By the way, Usain Bolt in his world record ran 27.8 miles per hour. So Garces is not too far behind that. But he did. You were rightly pointed out he did do that chasing a guy who scored a goal. So. Yeah. That's really nice statistic, but it didn't add up to anything for the Galaxy.
Yeah, no, and in the win column did not do anything. Were you go ahead, Anda?
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say that was the trophy presentation and all that stuff, the banners and everything pregame was the highlight of the evening, because once the whistle blew, it was all downhill from there, right? But I mean, Kevin, you were on, I'm sure, doing the preview with Josh earlier in the week. I mean, were you actually stunned or shocked by that loss? And in your opinion, like, what's the one thing that went wrong, completely haywire in that defeat?
Well, I was shocked. Well, first of all, I thought the Galaxy played a really poor game. There was no, I thought Peck was totally isolated. Well, and so was Fagundes for that matter. But definitely, we saw in the playoffs, if you were paying attention, we saw in the playoffs that when teams decide that they want to take Peck out of a game, they can do it. Seattle was really good at that. And that's why Dejan scored 6 goals in the 5 games. That's why the whether it's a Mateus Nascimento or somebody, when Paintsil comes back, somebody needs to be a threat. They don't even have to score; they just have to be a threat, so that there aren't 3 guys on Peck all game. Right. And I thought, excuse me again, I thought San Diego did a great job of taking Peck out of the game. I wouldn't say he was ineffective, but he wasn't allowed to really get into the game. He had 1 shot on goal. So, that San Diego was very effective on that. But San Diego surprised me because I saw them in Coachella, and I thought it was one of the worst MLS teams I'd ever seen. I know they won their last game over New York Red Bulls 6-0. I think there was a feeling, a belief that game was a game that the Red Bulls, they had played a number of games in Coachella. They were going home. They had a long flight ahead of them that very night, and it was just like, let's just get out of here without anyone getting hurt. And so I didn't put a lot of stock into that game. But when I saw San Diego, they were the worst MLS team I'd seen in a long time, and I covered Chivas USA, so that's saying something. And then when they came out and played the way they played against the Galaxy, wow, the game plan was really good. Clogged the midfield. They knew that Ricky Puig wasn't there, and they were going to deny the Galaxy those connecting passes. I thought Cerrillo, had a really difficult time, and Sanabria as well, getting the ball through the midfield and getting it to the attackers. Marco Royce had a poor game, but that's because Marco Royce never saw the ball. The ball never got to him. I thought San Diego did a real good job with that. And the problem with that for the Galaxy is now every other team in the league looked at that and said, aha, that's how you stop the Galaxy. Deny the ball through the middle of the park, double team Peck, and you're going to take a lot of the Galaxy offense out of that. Greg Vanney's smart enough to look at that and say, okay, well, here's the adjustments we're going to make. And we'll see if he's able to make the adjustments and whether the players are able to make that adjustment. But, everyone always says, one player does not make a team. It's pretty hard to argue against the Galaxy not being this, not being a different team with Ricky Puig. And so when he's not there, they are a different team, and they can't do the same things. And you have to have a different game plan, a different style of play.
Yeah, you're very right. I mean, you can't replace a unicorn. They just have to figure out a different way to play, like you said. And Greg Vanney, credit to him. I mean, he made the necessary adjustments last year a bunch of times in the second half of games to go ahead and get victories. So I think they're going to be okay. Before I ask you this next question, we have a super chat by the one and only Real CL says we should all get together at karaoke. Kevin, yes. You're on the clock. That means we got to go out and do karaoke now. And so I hope you got a song picked out. But if you had to guess, is this problem a couple game problem and they'll figure it out, or a couple months problem until they really learn the system and really learn to read each other and become kind of predictable, quote unquote, like Greg Vanney said?
I think it's a Paintsel problem. When Paintsel comes back, I think that's going to solve a lot of the problems. And Greg Vanney talked about, Paintsel has a quad injury. Quads and hamstrings, by the way, are injuries that I've seen a number of times. And if they're not 100% healed, they'll come back, especially a hamstring. A guy will hurt a hamstring and it'll never be the same again. So what Greg Vanney wants to do is, as he said after the game, is make sure that this is one injury for Paintsel and not an injury that follows him all season. So he's going to give him extra rest. But they got, as we said, 7 games in 22 days. They could come out of this stretch. They play good teams, Minnesota, Portland, Vancouver, all playoff quality teams. They could come out of this Orlando City. Excuse me again. Orlando City, they could come out of this stretch way down in the standings. And will they be close enough to recover? So I think this stretch is really as important as the style of play. It's coming very fast. Sanabria is key to this as well. I think Cerrillo really misses Marky Delgado or Bergman. He misses a veteran that can help him out. Sanabria is not that player, and he certainly isn't that player right now. Sanabria is key to getting this going, but I think Paintsel, if he's able to return sometime this month, that'll make a huge difference, whether he returns in time to save this little stretch. Yoshida did say something, too, after the game where he was asked about, look, you lost at home for the first time since October of 2023. The home unbeaten streak is over. And he right away said, yes, but we haven't lost 2 in a row yet. So we got to go win at Vancouver. Vancouver's coming over off a 4-1 win over Portland. And then they won their Champions Cup series as well, or Vancouver rather. Vancouver is pretty hot. They play really well at home. It's going to be on turf. Yoshida wants to preserve that, that streak where they haven't lost multiple games all season. That's going to be a tough order on turf there with, missing a couple of your big stars, playing against a really good Vancouver team.
Yeah, Rob, I was just going to chime in and say, like, I think it's interesting that so early on in the season, I mean, Greg, with all his post-match comments, he's very much a process guy, right? Very, very much, very process driven. But it's interesting, so early on in the season, how is that process going to keep up in terms of getting points? And so if if it falls you down the other way, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the chatter and what the discourse will be amongst the fan base and even amongst you guys in the press corps, right? So it's going to be really interesting, man, to see how this next month shapes up.
Let me say this about that. Everyone's talking about, there were some people, I hope they were joking, saying, Vanney out and get rid of Will Kuntz. Let's go back and remember where the Galaxy was in the middle of 2023 with the fan boycott, and they won I don't know how many games they won, not a lot, and 7 goals. Ricky Puig and Tyler Boyd led the team with 7 goals. Last year they had 4 guys with more than 10 goals and 10 assists each. They won an MLS Cup. So the team is totally different, and it's different because of Greg Vanney and because of Will Kuntz. So, one game does not destroy all that. Looking to the positive, let's just say they go through this streak and they come out of it really at the bottom of the standings. One thing is the Western Conference this year is not going to have a lot of those. I think Kansas City is going to be a pretty poor team. But San Diego looks like they're going to be good. San Jose with Bruce Arena is going to be really good. Vancouver is going to be good. It's not going to be those bottom feeders. Every year there's always 3 or 4 teams at the bottom. You can just discount them, and the playoff race starts from 10th place on up. I think on a positive thing, this Galaxy team is going to be really good at the end of the season when Ricky Puig comes back, when Paintsil's healthy, Peck's back, when Sanabria and Nascimento get playing together. This team could be really good at the end of the season. And I think if the Galaxy is off to a slow start, I think you're going to see Greg Vanney's strategy change a little bit. Just get to the playoffs. Let's just finish 5, 6, 7. Let's maybe 4th. Let's get that home playoff game. But this is a team that just won an MLS Cup. And when you have them fully constituted and everyone's there, it's a team that can win an MLS Cup again. So if they enter April or May with a poor record, sort of somewhat down the table, I think the strategy changes. Let's just get to the playoffs healthy and then watch what we can do. Then it's a 5-game tournament or 6-game tournament. And I would not bet against the Galaxy in a situation like that when they have all their pieces together.
Quick news break, Kevin. You did mention that Vancouver just played lights out against Portland the other day, 4-1. They just ended up beating Saprissa 2-0 at home. That's a Brian White double. And he's always scoring a couple goals against the Galaxy at the very least. But we'll get to this game preview here in a second. But what were the bright spots for you from the loss?
From the Galaxy?
Yeah, from that Galaxy San Diego game.
I really don't know that there were many. Galaxy brought in a new goalkeeper. I'm really concerned about him. Mikovic, a young goalkeeper, made a pretty poor mistake that led to the first goal, really opened the game up. The problem with that is, again, he's a young goalkeeper, and he's got to make sure that he puts that behind him quickly. And I think that John McCarthy, I'm sure, has talked to him about that. That's the worst thing that can happen is a young goalkeeper getting out there, getting the starting job, and then making a mistake like that. It can kind of haunt him. I guess I thought the back line was okay. Yoshida was frustrated all game. He was trying to direct traffic, and it seemed like not a lot of people were paying attention to him. John Nelson, another solid game, but I think maybe you need a little more offense with Paintsil out. Maybe you need a little more offense out of the back line. Maybe Aude starts to play a little bit more. Maybe he starts in Vancouver. Christian Ramirez, 12 touches, never had a shot on goal or otherwise. I don't know that that's his fault. He didn't get the ball. What's he supposed to do? He's a striker. He's in the box. He needs the ball. That didn't come to him. And then again, no answer when Peck is taken out of the game by the defense. There was just no answer. I don't know that there really was many good bright spots for the Galaxy. Maybe Miguel Berry coming off the bench and being really dangerous. Again, I don't think he's a starter. I think he's a bench and coming off the bench. I think he's a lot like Alan Gordon. He comes in and brings something a little bit different. Maybe that was the bright spot.
You mentioned Maya, and you had a conversation with him a couple weeks ago about salary and about pay wages and about lack thereof of not raises, actually. The LA Galaxy Club roster profiles out today, and we got a look at what some of these players make and their designations. Is there anything that stands out to you?
No, not really. I mean, people are talking about Maya Yoshida. The hit against the salary cap is somewhere around 630. So to get to where he was last year, he would need about $350,000 in allocation money. I don't think he's going to get that. He's angry about taking a pay cut because he played more minutes than anyone in MLS last year at 36, was the captain of a team that won MLS Cup, was super important to a defense that welcomed a new goalkeeper, welcomed an outside back, and a new center back, through the season, and thought that he deserved a raise. He did tell me too that he is still going to play 100%. He's not. He doesn't think about his salary when he's on the field. He's going to give everything he has, and he still wants to be the captain. But he did tell the Galaxy that, you know what, you guys want me to do supermarket openings or autograph sessions somewhere, no, you're not paying me for that. So that's the one thing he's not going to do. But he said, as far as what happens on the field, it's not. He doesn't think about his paycheck when he goes on the field.
Yeah, no, I've always told Chat and Ananda that he's the consummate gentleman. And that's been on the field in my experience, and whenever he's spoken to us in the press box or the press room, he's always just been a class act. You started off the show talking about the situation here with the travel in Vancouver to Costa Rica and everything like that. You called it in a tweet the worst possible scenario for the Galaxy. With the fixture congestion, how do you think the Galaxy handled the situation? I mean, I've even read from certain Galaxy fans that they're like, play G2 in the league because it's a long season and the Champions League should take priority. Is there a certain way that Greg you think should be prioritizing this?
Well, LAFC in 2022 was a really good team, and then the next season, because they made Champions Cup and they had Campeones Cup and they had Leagues Cup, too many cups. They played 53 games and traveled far enough to circumnavigate the globe 2.5 times. That's just too much. Jesus. You can't do that. In 9 months, they played a game every 5 days, 4 or 5 days for 9 months while flying around the world 2.5 times. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And MLS needs to think about this. And I've actually talked to Don Garber about it. And I asked him, are there too many matches? And he said, yeah, the fixture congestion is ridiculous. He said that as he was adding Leagues Cup to the schedule. So they have made some changes.
Oh, Don.
They have made some changes. Teams will not play Leagues Cup and U.S. Open Cup. That's a step in the right direction. But teams still will play Leagues Cup or U.S. Open Cup. They will play CONCACAF Champions Cup. They will play Campeones Cup, which is, I know, a one-off, but it's still a game you have to play, and it's a cup. So they will play all these things. So now I guess the fixture congestion has come down a little bit, but still, if somebody goes deep in all these tournaments and the playoffs now, first round is best of 3. What? Where did that come from? So if a team goes deep in every tournament and has to play the wild card round and then the best of 3, they're still going to play about 50 games. That's just too much. So, and again, you look at the Galaxy traveling down to Costa Rica. Miami's going to Jamaica to play its next leg.
Yeah.
From Miami, that's you don't even have to put your seatbelt on for that flight. So they have a huge advantage in that. I think maybe that's the next thing that MLS has to look at. There's 4 teams in California now. Why not say we knew in December who was going to Campeones Cup or Champions Cup. We didn't know where they would be playing, but we knew they would have these 2-leg series, and we knew there was a possibility of them going to Mexico or Central America. We knew all that. So why not have the Galaxy play and LAFC and anyone else who's in that situation play the local teams? Why is the Galaxy not opening the season with San Jose, San Diego, LAFC? Why is Vancouver not playing Seattle and Portland? Why are these teams not playing the teams close to them in league, in the MLS games for the first month or 2 of the season? I guess one reason is the California teams and for that matter, the Northwest teams are all fairly good weather teams at this time of year. And so you want New York and those teams to come out here. I can understand that reason. You don't want Minnesota playing at home a lot of games, in February. I understand that, but there has to be some concession made to all this travel and to the fixture congestion. They've moved to ease the fixture congestion a little bit. Now I think the next thing they need to think about is travel, because it's very unique to MLS. No other league in the world has these kind of travel problems.
We do have a super chat from Raphael who says double dose of the panda this week. We knew you had fans out there, man. Like I said, we're world renowned, world famous. There's this match coming up now against Vancouver. The Galaxy are 13th place in the stands. However, Vancouver is second right now. We already mentioned they won 4-1 against Portland, and the key players in that one were Ryan Gauld, Pedro Vite, my countryman, Sam Adekubik, and Jada Nelson, who had an absolute banger of a game with 3 assists on the evening, and he's now ranked first in the league in big chances created. What do you put this one up to? Do you think it's a set? They have Portland's number. They do well at Providence Park, or I mean, what led to them being one of the big surprises of the weekend? Do you think?
Well, they had a good team, and they made a coaching change, and when you make a coaching change, it's always going to. And they had a good team before, but the fact that they won their Champions Cup series shows just how good they are. When a team makes a coaching change, it's never neutral. The team either gets really good or really bad, depending on the strength of the coach and the popularity of the coach they lost. And this is not in any way a shot at the coach they lost. I liked him a lot, but
Vanney was cool.
Yeah, I think the team has reacted to the new coach. And as far as the Galaxy, I don't know how much you guys have talked about this, but the penalty that goes to MLS Cup champions, the MLS Cup curse, it is a real thing. And here's why it's real. Because that salary cap is so merciless, and it doesn't move, and there's only a few ways around it. You can bring in U22 guys, you can bring in young designated players, you can use a lot of allocation money, and Will Kuntz has gone everywhere. He's looked under every sofa cushion trying to get some of that allocation money. But what happens is players in their contracts, they get bonuses if a team is successful, and then they can also get bonuses if they are successful. That money counts against the cap. Now, the Dodgers, you mentioned the Dodgers, they won the World Series. They get this money from the World Series. Each player gets about $400,000. That money doesn't count against the
Right.
Major League Baseball salary cap. That's a bonus. That's free money. The Galaxy in MLS, all that money counts. So if you're close to the gap, to the salary cap, brother, if you're close to the cap and you want to be, the goal is to use every dollar you have. So the Galaxy did that. What happened was they got last August and they thought, we're close. We have a good chance of doing something this year. And they pushed all their chips into the table and they got Marco Royce. They knew, Will Kuntz knew at that moment that they were screwed if he was right. And they actually did have a good season. And he said by the time they got to MLS Cup, it didn't matter if they won or lost. They were going to have to pay those bonuses anyways, and that they were going to have to make some changes. So he knew when that team took the field, that was the last time he was going to see those players together. And what really hurt him too is, I don't know if you guys have talked about this, Dayon was a U22 initiative player and Gabriel Peck was a young designated player.
Right.
Both of them aged out of those contracts. That was at least $1.1 million that of money that just added to the cap immediately. And they had to do something with that. So you saw LAFC had the same problem. LAFC's averaged about 27 transactions a winter since 2022, since they won that MLS Cup. You see Columbus still playing well, but they've lost a lot of players. That's why teams don't repeat. MLS wants to have parity. They want every season to start, with every team having a chance to win, which is great because you look at the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich's won like 11 of the last 12, and you look at the Premier League, it's Liverpool, Manchester City. You look at La Liga, it's Barcelona and Real Madrid. No one else has a chance. They want every team to have a chance, but the problem is because you have to keep moving players in and out, fans now, supporters, you guys are cheering for laundry. You're not cheering for players that are going to stay there. LAFC has 3 players left from its championship team in 2022. Where are the Galaxy going to be in a couple of years? How many of these players are still going to be here?
We have a question from Raphael. He says, Panda, should the LA Galaxy prioritize MLS and forget Champions League?
I think this next game may tell us a little bit about that. Again, you just look at the history. And again, I hate to keep talking about LAFC, but it's the team that most of us know because they're here. They really prioritize. They've been to Champions League, Champions Cup final twice in the last 6 years, and they lost both. They're the only MLS team this century to make it to the final twice. They're the only MLS team ever to lose twice. They did prioritize that in 2023, and it in a way, it kind of destroyed them. They never recovered from that. People remember who won the MLS Cup. We don't really remember who won the Champions League because no MLS team ever wins it. Seattle's the only team to win it this century. Seattle and Galaxy, I believe, are the only two that win it ever. if people do remember who won the MLS Cup, that's what the season ticket holders pay their tickets for. I don't know if you want to. You never want to lose. You never want to say we're not going to try to win this game, but you do make that decision when you move lineups around and when you give guys rest. I think the schedule, more than the particular games, are going to dictate how that goes. Just 7 games in 22 days. Guess what? Same guys aren't going to play every game.
Well, let's look at that next game real quick. It'll be the 37th time that the Galaxy and the Whitecaps play each other. And the Galaxy did pretty well against the Vancouver Whitecaps last year. They won both matches, home and away. And in the last meeting, they got that 3-1 win, right? But they had lost the 3 previous matches at BC Place. Kevin, why do you think BC Place is so tough of a ground for the Galaxy to play at?
Well, I think the first part is the turf, and it's not good turf. It's turf, and it's not good turf. It's generally the weather's a little bit different. It's cold. It's damp there a lot. The Vancouver. I've been to games in Vancouver, and the Whitecaps don't draw super well, but they always do for the Galaxy. So the crowd gets into it maybe a little bit more than normal, and it is a little bit of a difficult trip. And when you talk about historically. A lot of those numbers come in the pre-charter flight days. Remember, charter flights didn't start until COVID. So you go back into the pre-charter flight days. Getting to Vancouver by air and then getting out of Vancouver can be pretty tough. So I think there was travel. I think there was weather, but I think the field played a big part in it. There are 3 turf fields in the Western Conference now: Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver. None of them are really good fields. They're turf for one, and the ball doesn't act right. The turf is abrasive. You go into a slide tackle and you come up bleeding. So it's not a good place to go play as a visitor. Now, you talk to Seattle and Vancouver, and they'll tell you their fields are great. They love playing there. Why? Because the other team comes in and doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, they're not used to it for sure. Ananda and I, we fancy ourselves some soccer stars on Saturdays, and when we switch fields and it's that tough turf field, the ball definitely bounces different. So if you're used to
all those bobbles,
it always bobbles. And so if you're used to a certain way, and then all of a sudden you go play on that turf field, these you gotta have to adjust for the pass, for how hard you send a ball in, or if you send a cross-field ball or something like that. So yes, the turf definitely plays a part, guys. And then, like Kevin said, the travel. Galaxy have 3 players out at the moment. Ricky Puig, which is the long-term absence. You've already talked about how big of a miss Paintsill is.
Huge.
And Mauricio Cuevas. Of course, we'll get the updated injury list here from Greg at media availability tomorrow, guys. But Vancouver has Damir Kreilach out, Emmanuel Sabi and JC Grando out in this one. Kevin, you talked about the lineup and the limitations that Marco Royce had, the limitations that Sanabria had. If you were Greg Vanney at the moment, would you go with the exact same starting lineup, or would you try something a little bit different?
No, I think, as much as I hate to do this, because I love John Nelson, and I think John Nelson is a big reason why the Galaxy even made it to the MLS Cup final, much less won. I think I might take him out and put in Julian Alde just because you need to get a little more offense. Ramirez, again, was ineffective, but it really wasn't his fault, so I think I'd probably give him another start. He doesn't seem to have really, I know he's only been here 2 weeks, but he doesn't really seem to have developed any chemistry yet. That's going to take a little bit of time. Would you put Miguel Berry in there just because he knows everybody better? I don't know. I like Miguel Berry off the bench. He seems to be sort of have that game-changing presence off the bench. Alan Gordon was a great player, but you would never start him, especially at the end of his career. So I definitely make the change with Audi, and then I would think about the Ramirez-Berry switch. Maybe you make that switch in Vancouver and keep Ramirez fresh to go down to Costa Rica. He is in his 30s. He's an experienced player. He's probably the player you want on the field down there. Another thing you might want to look at whether Royce plays in Vancouver or Costa Rica. Here's a guy that you probably maybe don't want him on turf, given his age, and his fitness level. You might not want him on turf, and you might want him down in Costa Rica. That crowd could be really intense. It could be I know it's a round of 16 in CONCACAF Champions Cup. It's not the final yet, But my guess is that with an MLS team coming down there, an MLS club like the Galaxy, big club, the fans are going to be out in numbers. They're going to be fired up,
Right.
and Royce may be the guy you want on the field to handle that.
Yeah, everybody wants to take down the champion, right, Ananda?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was just going to bring up that point. I'm glad you brought it up, Panda, about Royce, and I think with the turf considerations, I think it's an interesting one that we may Greg may think about Winder. I mean, here's a guy that I think in his cameo did pretty well. You know, he started running the channels. Of course, he's not fully integrated in terms of all of the nuances and the kinks of how Greg wants to progress the ball and where he wants him positionally. But look, I watched a little bit of that first half today, Rob, and your countryman Pedro Vite in that midfield. That Vancouver midfield is very good, very athletic,
Taught him everything he knows,
positionally sound, and maybe a guy like Winder who will run in the channels a la Delgado. He's got a nice physical profile, covers a lot of ground, especially on that turf. That could be an option. And then if you need Marco Royce, let's say you're chasing the game or you need to break a deadlock, maybe in those last 10, 15 minutes to give him a run out. It's an interesting one, but I thought of that as well in terms of the Royce selection because he didn't have the greatest of games. But like you said, Panda, no service, right, on Sunday.
See, now you put Winder in there, which I agree would be a good substitution, but then you got Sanabria, Ramirez, and Winder all playing with new teammates, all really not having much chemistry with those guys yet. And if you have Nascimento in there too, then there's 4 players. You know, if he gets any time at all. If I decided that Royce was not going to start in Vancouver, if I were Greg Vanney, if Royce was not going to start in Vancouver, he stays in LA and he flies down on a commercial flight on Monday, I think. Don't make him sit in a plane for 6 hours up there and back if he's not going to play. If you're going to rest him, rest him. And the best way to rest him is to leave him at home.
Yeah, just
give
in the comfort of your home.
Give him the MLS season ticket and let him watch the game on his phone, and then fly him down to Costa Rica on a commercial flight.
Brizzle Press, thank you so much. We're digging you being here, man. Thank you so much, or Miss whoever Brizzle is. But
Mike, very excited. Shout out, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Kevin, earlier you mentioned Vanni Sortini. I really liked that guy. He was very much a character. One of my favorite quotes from him was, "We are the only team in the world that plays a true back three." He's no longer there, and so they're no longer playing a back three. Vancouver switched to a 4-3-3 system. Who do you think that benefits most in that team? I mean, they have largely the same team as last year. Who do you think is the beneficiary here?
Well, the formations, Bruce Arena was one that talked about this a lot. He said, formation is just a starting point. When the ball's kicked, everybody moves around. And, and Bruce Arena, by the way, on paper, his lineup that he used in a 4-0 win in their opener, that was a 3-man back line on paper, and a 5-man midfield. Really wasn't. They played with 5 defenders on defense, and they played with 3 defenders when they were going forward and 2 wings. So, again, it depends on how you want to draw that up and who's doing making that determination. Vancouver has done very well learning a new coach and a new system. They are playing a different way this year, and it seems that in one game, 3 games if you count Champions Cup, it seems that they've adapted very well. So I guess right now you'd have to say advantage goes to them.
Well, one of my countrymen, Pedro Vita, scored a banger of a goal against Portland. But like I mentioned, the man who ran riot in that one was Jaden Nelson, ex-Toronto player, 3 assists and a banger of a goal himself. So,
I really like their goalkeeper too.
Yeah.
He's super solid.
Ananda always has to help me with the pronunciation of his name.
Takaoka.
We've been saying his name. Well, I've been trying to say his name for 3 years, and I still haven't gotten it right. Takaoka.
By the way, you mentioned names. Mickey Yamane is how I like to say it, but Joe Totino swears it's Mickey Yamane.
Yeah,
is the way that is the preferred pronunciation in Japanese. I'm going with Yamane just because it rolls off the tongue better, but Totino swears it's Yamani, so we'll see.
Well, he's over my shoulder right now, so I have to go with Joe all the time. So
where is he? There it is.
There he is. He's hiding behind the scarf there, but he's over my shoulder.
Well, Rob,
he's on my shoulder all the time.
Really quick, when Panda was talking about the formations, I mean, I'll back you up on that one too, Kevin. I mean, remember Greg Vanney in that Cup final played a 4-4-2 diamond with Giovinco and Altidore up top, right? So it's just a matter of, how your players execute what it is that you want to execute as a coach. So yeah, man, I think, Rob, I think it's a new manager bounce, right? There always is one. We'll see how long it lasts. But they look like a good team. Look really solid.
Well, this midfield, right, of Pedro Vite and Andres Cubas, they cover a lot of ground themselves. So it'll be interesting to look at that midfield battle. Of course, Brian White and Ryan Gaul, dubbed the working class MVP. He'll also they'll also put in good performances. But chat, I want to know, give us your prediction since we're coming to the end here. Give us your prediction for how this match is going to play out. We'll get to Kevin's prediction in a minute. But before we do, I want to ask you, Kevin, we do something here all the time. It's called fill in the blank. So for the Galaxy to win this match, they have to
control the midfield.
Yeah,
Great
there
point.
we go. Just talking about the midfield. And then we'll flip it around. For Vancouver to win this game, they have to
control the midfield. It's all going to be the midfield. It's all the midfield. And we saw that against San Diego. Clog the Galaxy up, make sure that there's no connection. There's no line breaking passes. None of that happened. And there's no one like Ricky Puig to force the ball through. So if you can't get, again, Ramirez, 12 touches in 63 minutes or whatever he played. No shots on goal or otherwise. Heck, one shot all day. Fagundes didn't have a shot. So, if you don't get the ball to those guys, Royce is not going to come back and get the ball like Ricky did. No. And maybe Winder will, I don't know. But if you deny the Galaxy any access through the midfield and make it tough for them to bring the ball up, of course, they're not going to score because, they're not going to start kicking 50-yard field goals. They got to get the ball into the box. And if they can't do that, they're not going to score.
Rafael, another super chat. Hey, Rafael, says Panda. Early prediction. How far do the LA Galaxy go this year?
Well, they definitely make the playoffs, and I think they go fairly deep in the playoffs. I'm not going to predict an MLS Cup because I think right now they're a flawed team. Until they get everyone at full strength, it's really hard to say how good they are. Also, teams just don't win. No one's repeated as MLS Cup champion since the Galaxy in 2011, 2012. So I'm not going to predict that they win. I am going to say, however, that if they get Ricky back, say in August, that's like trading for the best player in MLS just as the playoff stretch begins. That's going to make a huge difference for a number of reasons. So the Galaxy, presumably by that time, the Galaxy have a winning record and they're on their way to the playoffs. So getting a guy like that back, they're going to be confident. It's going to add a boost to them. Ricky's going to be rested. Everyone else is going to be beat up by the time they get there. They're going to be 20 games into the season. Ricky's going to come in rested. It's going to be a very different team when Ricky comes back, obviously. And if he comes back good, early enough to make a difference, and again, rested, not beat up, he's not going to go through this stretch of 7 games in 27 days or whatever it is. He's not going to have to do that. He's going to be rested and ready. And so I think that's going to make a big difference. I think the Galaxy will make the playoffs once they get there. I think they'll be very dangerous. How far they go, man, that's hard to say. Western Conference Final, that might be where they get tripped up.
And we saw the battle that was that Western Conference Final against Seattle.
By the way, Seattle again. I think Seattle is going to be there again too. I think Seattle is the best team in the conference right now.
They definitely strengthened. They actually have a true striker now, rather than trying to put Jordan Morris in that role when, it's debatable whether he's a better wing player or striker.
And don't sleep on San Jose. I mean, this is a team that gave up. They set an MLS record for most goals allowed last year. They get a clean sheet in their first game. They won 4-0. Bruce Arena can do miracles. He's with Dave Sarakin again. People look at that team and say that was the worst team in MLS history last year. I think it was. It was right there with those Chivas teams we talked about. They were terrible. Bruce came in. He made a lot of moves, brought in people that he knows and likes, like Mark Anthony Kaye and Dave Romney. People look at, he gets Josef Martinez and Chucho Arango. Those are two guys that are known to be a little bit selfish. They're both going to want the ball. That is a recipe for disaster, people have told me. And my response to them is Bruce came in with David Beckham and Landon Donovan fighting in the clubhouse and turned him into a champion in a couple of seasons. If anyone can make Josef Martinez and Chucharongo play together at Spruce Arena, it could still blow up. But and I'm not predicting they win. I'm not predicting they even get a home playoff game. But they are going to make the playoffs, and I think they are going to be a very good team.
Ananda, before we go to predictions here with Kevin, go ahead and hit us up with some betting odds provided by you and Dr. Raquinho.
Well, actually, I'll do the betting odds first. Then I want to go back to you because you've been asking all the questions today, Rob. So I need to ask you a question in terms of the Galaxy. Sure. But I think I know where you're going to go with this, but let's see. So real quick, guys, I'm not your financial advisor, but here are the betting odds. Plus 105 for the for the Vancouver Whitecaps, the home team. That's a 49% win probability. The Galaxy at a plus 230 at 30%. So actually for a road team, that's actually quite high. I think they're giving the pedigree of the Galaxy a lot of credit there, but it is going to be tough. You guys have talked about all the elements that go into this game. Obviously the Galaxy are still gelling as a team. It's early doors. The turf is going to be an issue, the bobbles and all that. And I distinctly remember, Rob, that game 3-1 last year, that space or that threat in and behind provided by Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsill was the real difference maker, and a guy that can thread the needle like a Ricky Puig. I remember that pass he made. It was like through 3 lines, incredible pass, and that just broke wide open the game. So it's going to be tough, man. But what do you think? Are you with Kevin in terms of for the Galaxy to win this game? They need to control that midfield.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly why I talked about it just before. I mean,
that's why we did a video on it.
Yeah,
I did a video on it. Yeah.
Kevin's very right. I mean, Sanabria hasn't really looked connected. He doesn't really seem like he gets not gets the system, but knows like every fine point of the system. Like maybe he grabs like the macro. Now he needs the grab the micro of the system. But then our good friend Profe Alex, I'm sure you guys will talk about this in Los Galácticos. They were slow in transition. That Marco Royce wasn't finding the ball, like Kevin said. So there was that disconnect between the lines, between defenders, between the midfield, between attack. And for as much as Mickey Yamane tried to drop or not even drop, but tried to advance that ball from the back.
Yeah, flood the midfield. Yeah,
you're right. It just wasn't working because they weren't finding the right combinations. People weren't in the spaces they needed to be positionally. And Greg talked about that, right? He said that, Gabriel Peck couldn't do anything because he was covered by 2 or 3 people, and it was because people weren't where they needed to be positionally, and Diego was out on an island. So I think as long as they actually understand where they need to be, like Greg said it last year, he wants them to be predictable, not to the other team, but to each other. So once they become predictable, i.e. once they get comfortable with each other and know where they're going to be, I think they should be okay. I think, like Kevin said earlier, it's going to be one of those things when you get Joseph Paintsill back, you're going to have that other option. It's going to unlock keys to the attack that you don't have right now. You're not going to have Miguel Berry running in behind. He's not that kind of player. We haven't seen Nascimento yet, but I'm sure he's going to have to adapt to the system and where his teammates are going to be and how he's going to be used. But I mean, sooner rather than later. The good thing is it's a long MLS season. The bad thing is that the Champions Cup is a knockout tournament, so you don't get it together against Herediano after tons of travel, and you're out of the tournament already. So, I mean, good and bad there, right?
Yeah, I think it could be a good thing. In Vancouver, if Elijah Winder starts or plays a lot of minutes, I think he's going to have a really good game, and here's why. I think he's young enough and sort of green enough in MLS not to be intimidated. I think he has a ton of confidence after making his MLS debut. I think he knows he played well. He's proven to himself he can play on this level. I don't think that was ever a question. I don't think he was ever intimidated by it. For some reason, Sanabria he's coming in, he has the pedigree, but he kind of has a deer in the headlights look. He seemed to be hiding behind San Diego players for most of the night. And he needs to find his footing. That's not a problem with Elijah Winder. I think if Elijah Winder plays, and I think if the midfield still struggles to have much of an impact, I see Elijah Winder just taking this game by the scruff of the neck and just do it and just say, come on, guys, let's go, follow me. And, I think that he could have a very good game. I'm not sure the Galaxy are going to win. If you put me in the spot, I'd probably say 2-0 or 2-1 Vancouver. I think they're playing really well. They got a lot of confidence, back-to-back wins to start the season, beating Saprissa at home. But I think it could be not a season-changing game, but if Winder does what I think he's capable of doing, if Winder steps up and makes people notice him, I think this could be one of those games where we look back at, in the middle of the season and say, remember, we didn't know who this Winder guy was, and then he had that great game against Vancouver. This could be a defining moment for him.
Well, you're very right. We were going to put you on the hot seat, but you beat us to the punch. So Kevin's giving a Vancouver win 2-0 or 2-1. Ananda, since I went first last time, go ahead and go.
No, you're on the main screen there, so you can go ahead and go because I know you always put me on the spot and I go first. I'm gonna give you a head and heart pick. Yeah, I'm gonna give you the same as well.
Kevin, sometimes we're hopeful. And so we give a head and a heart pick. What my head says and what my heart says. My head says you're very right. The Galaxy do go down or do go up to Vancouver and suffer a little more pain before they get a little bit of pleasure. They probably drop this one. Yeah, you're right. 2-0, 2-1. My heart would be very happy if it's a tie. That's my heart pick. A 1-1 tie. They grind it out and they're able to somehow pick up a goal. And there it is, 1-1 heart. Ananda,
see, Rob, this is why you go first because you did all the hard work. That's exactly what I was going to say. So I don't have anything to add with that. The only thing I will add to that though is, I mean, I think a tie would actually be a good result because just based off of again the elements, the schedule, everything that's going on. And Kevin, I'm right behind you on Winder, man. I think this could be an important game for him. I just have that feeling. And I think the opposition, the situation, I think it lends itself to a Winder sort of really good performance. Again, we've seen all the stats with this kid. He's got a really good frame. He covers the ground really well. And like you said, I think you're right. Alex and I did a tactical video around Sanabria. Sanabria was just kind of thinking too much. I think Greg talks about this a little bit in terms of he's being too mechanical and not sort of understanding the flow of the game versus Winder. I think he has a very different mentality and he's definitely a physical specimen, but I'm with you guys. This is going to be a tough game, man. Not going to be tough. This is going to be a tough game for sure, but yeah, heart pick is a draw. Would like to point.
Here's another thing to watch. Say Mikovic starts again, and I think you have to start him. Greg talked about him last year and told me early in the season that John McCarthy was brought over because he's a good dressing room guy, and he is. He's a character guy. Brought him over to tutor Mikovic, and Mikovic was going to be the starter by the end of last season. Then he had that quasi mutiny in the middle of the season, remember? And then the Galaxy, I think, pulled the plug on that idea. And McCarthy was playing so well, he finished the season. But my point was going to be, so he had a bad game in the first game. He had made that one mistake. He made some great saves, but he had that one mistake that kind of turned the game. So he goes up to Vancouver. He needs to put that out of his mind. Let's say he even plays a decent game, but does give up the 2 goals that I'm kind of predicting Vancouver scores. I think McCarthy starts in Costa Rica anyways. I think maybe that's already been the plan. So McCarthy starts that game in Costa Rica. What if he has a clean sheet? What if he makes 6 or 7 saves and has a good game? Then all of a sudden, do we have a quarterback controversy? Is there a controversy on who should be starting? Do you stay with the young kid? Because with a young guy, you need to show him confidence. You can't get him thinking, too far ahead. You got to show the confidence to the young player, and that's in all sports and all positions. But you also got to win. If they're 0-2 coming into the third game of the season, which I think is Minnesota, right? If they're 0-2 going to play Minnesota, you put McCarthy in there to stop the bleeding, and then it is the whole Mikovic experiment over. There's a lot of things that could possibly happen there. A lot of things to think about. I'm not predicting any of this happens. I'm just saying it sure looks like it could.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
And you're calling it right now that John McCarthy, the plan might be that John McCarthy starts for his experience, to give him a spell, Mikovic a spell. But because you've been around this team a long time, how Galaxy fans might interpret that, right? I mean, they're going to go off on Twitter. You already know about that, regardless if this was planned or not, especially if Mikovic has another rough game, and they get a loss there. So we have another super chat by Raphael who says, "Does Josh know that Kevin is moonlighting?"
He has no idea. He's doing his own pod right now.
Yeah. I mean, we can be the mistress. We're okay with that.
Yeah.
Shout out to the pod father. And then
Shout out,
shout out to you, Kevin. Thank you so much for being on with us tonight. Really quick before you go, can you please let the folks know where they can find you if you so choose?
Yeah, right now they can find me in Phoenix, but if they want to find me online, it's at the latimes.com. And I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at kbaxter11.
Hey, man, thank you so much. I guess we'll see you at the digs very soon. I'm glad that you and Ananda didn't fight at all. You being City and Ananda being Gunners. But I'm disappointed in both.
I have nothing to fight about at this moment in time. Probably Kevin feels the same way, but he's got a lot of trophies to show for it.
A lot of trophies. So. But Kevin De Bruyne may be coming to MLS. That's exciting.
Yeah, we've been hearing that San Diego link.
Yeah, this is a bad year, and my take on this is Pep Guardiola just stayed too long. He's still the best coach in the world, best club coach in the world. His tactics haven't changed. His coaching hasn't changed. What I think has changed is that team is a veteran team. A lot of those guys, especially the guys having poor seasons like Ederson, they've just been with Pep too long. They've heard the same speech. They've heard the same stuff. I think players, consciously or unconsciously, are tuning him out. They're the same players. They're still good. It's the same coach. He's still good. But the message has gotten a little stale. And I think that's what happened to Man City. They just signed Pep to an extension. I think they need to make a coaching change. Is there a better coach out there? Absolutely not. But is there a guy that can deliver the same message with a different tone of voice? Yes, and that's what they need.
Well, Kevin, all I got to say is it could be worse. You could be a United fan like me. And
oh, my God, they're 15th. They're in 15th place.
Brother, you don't have to tell me. I mean, like I said, that's why I was relying on one of you guys to not let the Scousers win. But, both of you guys' teams failed me because I know my team wasn't going to do it. But, yeah, chat, put your hands together for Kevin Baxter. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and joining us, especially, being away from home. We know how difficult that is. Please be safe out there and,
safe travels.
Keep pumping out those beautiful stories, man. We want to know what's going on in spring training.
Thank you. Thanks for
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Gracias. Well, guys, that was Kevin Baxter, one half of the world-renowned Panda and Pato from Corner of the Galaxy. Like I said, I don't even really know it was an option to be like, hey, Kevin, come on the show. But we connected with them at the CVI at the.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't know Podfather, or Podfather doesn't know that he's moonlighting. So there you go. You heard it from.
We're gonna keep it on the wraps then. But Josh, when you hear just know, like, you're always his first love. You're always our first love too. Shout out to the Podfather again. And let's go ahead and get some quick announcements out here, and then we'll be on our way as well. Remember, guys, it is Ananda's birthday tomorrow, so send him some love if you're in chat. This man, my co-host's birthday. And also Joe Tutino's birthday, the voice of the Galaxy. He celebrated his birthday 2 days ago. Here he is looking dapper. If you're a Galaxy fan, you are really, really lucky to have this man in your life. He's been a part of so many wonderful memories for me, and I know that he's been part of wonderful memories for you. So I hope he celebrated a wonderful birthday full of wonderful memories and surrounded by friends and family. We are celebrating Black History Month, and as part of Black History Month, we are giving you a Comets trading card of the day. That was a series put out by the Primos from Comets SC, and today's is Jonathan Dos Santos, nacido en la ciudad de Monterrey, Mexico. That was born in Monterrey, Mexico. And this one's going to be in Spanish. I'll translate. Raíces en Los Ángeles. El padre de Jonathan, el futbolista afro-brasileño Cicinho, jugó para el equipo LA Lasers de la MISL. His roots in Los Angeles. Jonathan's father, the Afro-Brazilian soccer player, futbolista Cicinho, played for the LA Lasers in the MISL. se convirtió parte del segundo par de hermanos en jugar juntos para el LA Galaxy cuando se unió a su hermano Giovanni. He became part of the second pair of brothers to play for the LA Galaxy when he joined his brother Giovanni, and nombrado capitán en 2019, Dos Santos fue seleccionado 2 veces al equipo de las estrellas de la MLS 2018-2019. Named captain in 2019, Dos Santos was selected 2 times to the All-Star team in 2018 and 2019. That's your Black Galaxy history for today. The Galaxy will be represented at the LA Kings night on Tuesday, March 11th. They'll be playing the New York Islanders. Tickets start at $29, I believe. Last time I checked a couple days ago, there were still tickets available. So go ahead and join your Galaxy community. And speaking of joining your Galaxy community, make sure to get out to the Blue, White, and Gold pop-up. That's happening on March 2nd at Common Space Brewery from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. That one is pet friendly, all ages, free for everybody. Go ahead and get out there and watch this away game against Vancouver that they're going to be doing a watch party for at 2 p.m. Yeah, man. I know where I will be on the 2nd. So, guys, I think that pretty much brings us to the end today. Eric Hernandez says, keep up the good work, guys, and G's up. We appreciate it.
Thank
Eric,
you so much, man.
Cheers to you, man.
And Rob, we hit 6 super chats, just like 6 MLS cups.
Is Eric the 6th one?
Eric's actually the 7th one. So yeah, I think I'm counting that. But anyways, guys, no, just super. I just want to say this. I mean, we're just blessed to have you guys just with us, listening. Even when we see y'all either at CVI or in the concourses at the digs, everyone that just says what's up and we have a nice conversation. Just, man, I like, it's just crazy to think, Rob, the journey we've been on the last, couple seasons, and this is season 3. So yeah, man, just super grateful for you guys. And thank you so much.
Shout out to all the G's out there and all the love, and shout out Kevin Baxter for being on here with us. Next time on this humble little pod called Lacuna Galaxiana, we'll bring you our Vancouver Whitecaps reaction / Champions Cup preview on Monday, March 3rd. You guys heard it. The Galaxy traveled to Costa Rica to face CS Herediano in the first match of the Champions Cup on Wednesday, March 5th. And the return leg is a week later at the digs on Wednesday, March 12th. Yeah, like I said, that brings us to the end. We can't wait to see you guys. If you guys see us out, go ahead and hit us up for a couple slaps. We would love to go ahead and give you some stickers. And next time we see you at the digs, same thing, man. Go ahead and hit us up. And yeah, we out. One thing left to say: LA strong, vamos campeones, and G's up. Happy birthday, Ananda.
Rob, you owe some folks some karaoke.
We'll get to it for sure.